Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of We Should Have Recorded That with Phil and...
Adam. Hi, Phil.
Hey, Adam. How's it
How's it
going?
going today? I'm good, thanks. How about you?
I'm okay. We were talking earlier. I am a little tired. I think we both are a little tired today. So
Yes, we are educators making it through the end of the semester.
yeah,
It is a long slog to Christmas.
right. But you're kind of getting closer to the point where you kind of sit back and relax, as I remember you saying.
Yes, I have grades due like in less than a week. So
Okay.
this week is exams and me grading, grading, grading,
Mm-hmm.
grading, and grading.
Right.
My favorite part of being a teacher. Yes.
Of course,
Yes.
of course. Because you have to punish the students, right?
You have to assess them.
We have
Hopefully
to assess
my
the students.
assessments are authentic and formative and promote real learning and are not punishment. Yes.
I hope I know they are. I know they are.
So Phil,
yeah.
do we have any comments on me getting out of control last week with just talking way too much?
So we actually do. We in an informal comment, my pastor, TJ, he commented. He said to me, "I listened to the podcast the whole way through this past weekend." And so, we must have been, you were sharing a lot of things that he was interested in. So he listened the whole way. And that was probably...
Sorry, TJ, that's an awesome comment. Like, I listened. No comment on whether it was good or bad. Just, I did it.
No, I don't want... I misrepresent his comments if you think that. No, he really enjoyed the topic. And I've talked with him before about that, and he's like, I really love you guys' chemistry, and it's really coming along. Y'all are, starting to kind of the chemistry on the podcast is really coming together.
Excellent.
And so I think he's another one of those people. If we were gonna have number 2 fan, I think he would be our number 2 fan.
Amazing. Thank you, TJ. We're fans of you as well.
Yes.
And I'm glad that our off-camera chemistry is now translating more on camera. This is excellent.
Right.
Yes.
What about you? Do you have any?
I do. I have 2. I received 2 comments. One from former guest on the podcast, Caitlin Barron, who wrote, this was in relation to our episode on friendship. Great episode. I don't have to be on your list for you to get coffee with next time you can come to Toronto, or if I can come to Rochester. And so then we talked about that. And then, I'll tell you what I said. I said, you're always welcome in Rochester, and as soon as the border opens, I'm there for coffee with Caitlin. And then I said, Coffee with Caitlin would be a great name for your podcast.
That would be.
Yes.
That would be.
And then my dear friend Rachel Fawcett from State College, Pennsylvania, wrote to me, love episode 26 of your podcast. It was so wonderful to see your face and hear your jubilant voice. Love you. So thank you, Rachel. Love the feedback, especially when it's, talking about my wonderful face and jubilant voice.
And since we're talking about faces and voices, I should mention, for those that are watching us, you will notice that you see a picture of me
Phil,
right now.
Oh, you're not going to release this one as a video, are you?
I mean, I don't. other than the fact that you can't see me, I don't know why we wouldn't. Why would you
wouldn't
not want
we?
to do that?
Because no one wants to see me. Every last one of the people who go to our Facebook and YouTube to watch the video version of this podcast do so because of your face, Phil.
Well, I mean, what we do have proof of is that someone does enjoy seeing your radiant. Didn't they say radiant?
Wonderful, I think.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Okay, we can say wonderful radiant.
Oh, if that's what they think, I must have the beauty filter on Zoom pushed all the way up.
No, although
that touch on the appearance setting on Zoom.
Yeah, right.
My skin has never looked better. Oh.
Yeah, but and like that feature, what they do is just blur things. That's how they touch up.
The blurrier one's vision, the more handsome I become.
Right. Yes. The less clear you can see me, the better looking I am.
Exactly. Oh, all right. You understand.
Woo, okay.
Well, good. Phil, how else can people? How can people send us their own comments when they listen to our brilliance?
Yes. So there's at least 3 ways for you to hear and contact us. On social media, you can contact us via Facebook and Instagram by WSRTwPA. And then you can also find us and comment on our YouTube videos by the name of the podcast.
So please do. Subscribe, comment, share, like, and follow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this week, Phil and I both feeling kind of tired. Now, I think we've said this before, okay, this week's going to be a short episode, and then they never turn out to be. I guess I just get energized when I'm with you, Phil.
Well, hey, I mean, I get, I was just going to say, that's how good conversations go, right? I mean, you just keep talking.
Yes, they do. The good conversations are not the draining kind. They are the life-giving, you feel like a life force coming within you. Anyway, and that's what you do to me, Phil. Life force. So
great.
Anyway, we say this is going to be short, but maybe we will not be able to stick with our promise. But today is part 2 of our conversation about friendship.
Yeah.
So, Phil, how shall we proceed?
Well, I mean, I think you started us really good last week with the article and the scripture. And so, it's I don't think we really touched on, what Jesus said to us in John. And so I think that's a great place for us to kind of set a tone for our conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to try to talk less and listen more in this episode. So, Phil, would you remind our audience of the verses from John that we shared last week? John chapter 15, verses 12 through 17.
Yes, I will. So here we go. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friend. You are my friends, and if you do, you are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. For all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit shall abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give it to you. These things I command you, so that you will love one another.
I love that. So, Phil, can we? There are so many things that we could comment here about how Christ loves us and how we could love others. I mean, first of all, let's just point out the obvious. He commands us to love one another. Like Jesus in ever so subtle a way says, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you." And then he goes on to talk about how exactly he has loved them. He has laid down his life for them. How, and then, can I admit though, these next couple of verses seem a little contradictory to me on the surface. So what I'm talking about is John chapter 15, verse 14, and then the following verse, verse 15, they seem a little bit contradictory. Let me start with verse 15. "No longer do I call you servants, ellipsis, ... but I have called you friends." Awesome. We are Christ's friends now, not his slaves. Back up though to verse 14, and he says, "You are my commands if you do you are my friends if you do what I command you." Which, do you see what I'm talking about? The surface level internal inconsistency there. Like, you're not my servant, you're my friend.
Right.
You're my friend if you do what I tell you, which is like what a servant does to a master. Yeah? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So let me just share a few ways that the master-servant relationship and the friend relationship are different from one another, okay? And Phil, I want you to interject after all of these.
Okay.
Okay. In the master-servant relationship, both servant and master keep secrets and don't share information. So Phil, how does the friend relationship contrast with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you have a real friend, you are more, you're transparent. You're not keeping secrets.
Yes, exactly. You share in vulnerability, your deep thoughts, dreams, hopes, desires, frustrations, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the master-servant relationship, a servant knows his or her place and doesn't argue. How does the friend relationship contrast with that?
Yeah, I mean, there's there's definitely more of a push and pull, like
Yes.
give and take.
Exactly. Okay, master servant. The servant obeys out of fear.
Yeah, and Jesus in other places says that perfect love casts out all fear.
Exactly. So
love motivation.
Then it becomes, and there are times, I think, in the kind of deep, covenantal, committed friendships we talked about last week, I think there are times where we can insist that a friend do something without maybe them fully understanding the why. And why would they do the thing they don't fully understand for us? Because they love and they trust. So it's not fear, it's love and trust. Absolutely. Okay. Master-servant relationship. A servant watches his or her words and only shares positive emotions.
Yeah, I hope that as you become better friends, your friend understands. Sometimes you don't articulate everything as well as you would like, and you can share more. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And I mean, that's why the first thing that you said when we logged onto this call tonight was, "I'm tired." It's obvious you are not my servant, because you wouldn't have been able to admit that to me.
Well, yes.
Oh. Yeah. All right. How about this? In the master-servant relationship, they both respond to dark times by avoiding one another. How does that contrast with the relationship of friends?
Yeah, friend, we should get closer. We should
Yes.
draw closer to each
Right.
other.
Not avoidance, but rather approach. Exactly.
Yeah.
In the master-servant relationship, when the servant offends, it leads to punishment. How about in the friends relationship?
Should forgiveness and some
Yes,
grace, right? Mercy.
exactly. Don't you just ah, don't you just love this? You know, the way that
Mm-hmm.
the friends relationship is one of, you know, friendship with Christ especially. It's one of obedience, it's one of trust, it's one of grace, it's one of vulnerability, it's one of that is characterized through its every moment and in its every gesture by love.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, how can we love others as Christ has loved us, which is his commandment?
Yeah, I think we start with the motivation, I think, first, right? So, I don't if we're really trying to develop a real friendship, then my motivation shouldn't be what am I getting out of it, but I want to um, I want to make a friend because I enjoy being around. I mean, I
Mm.
guess there's a deeper like the desire to receive is deeper than just a superficial like I want to be close to them for the power that I can gain or for the wealth or the
Mm-hmm.
fame,
Mm-hmm.
but because you actually enjoy that person. This kind of goes into one of the other points, like the person being the actual end and not a means.
Yes. Oh,
And so, yeah.
yes. Do you want to talk about that right now, Phil? Even though it's kind of far down on our
I
outline.
I I think we could stay here, but I think that it's starting with the love. Like I think
Yes.
that's the first thing you start with.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. It is unconditional. So yeah,
Yeah.
we'll come back to that point in just a moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I
Mhm.
see next on our outline is a topic very near and dear to my heart. We'll do the
Uh-huh.
singleness episode someday soon, but
Yeah.
let's just scratch the surface of the singleness versus marriage conversation.
Yeah, I think I mean last week you were kind of talking about how single people and married people can approach each other in friendship,
Mm-hmm.
and I think one of the things, we've talked about some, how we kind of come with these um kind of presumptions about relationships or people our status before, and in the church I think we do value marriage over singleness.
Oh,
I know
without
I
question.
felt that. I know I felt that, and I mean, and I get we value it. It has its importance because I mean, yeah, that is a command, but we almost value it at the detriment of singleness,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I mean, yes. I oh, you know,
Take your time. Take your time.
so I once I once was at a church and the pastor was preaching on Sunday mornings through the book of First Corinthians.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to First Corinthians 7 and um you know this is just the most obvious passage of scripture to me as an unmarried person.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to pick out one verse from First Corinthians 7 to read to our audience. First Corinthians chapter 7 verse 38. And I don't think I'm, proof texting here. This whole chapter backs up what this verse says. He who marries his betrothed does well, and he who refrains from marriage will do even better.
Mm.
Okay? That doesn't seem all that ambiguous to me. It seems pretty clear. And the title, and and as an unmarried person, I remember, like, 1 Corinthians 7 is very meaningful to me. I've studied it a lot on my own. And as we were coming up to the Sunday when the pastor was going to preach on 1 Corinthians 7, I was getting excited because everyone in the church was married. I mean, which is, I guess, is typical. There's not an atypical thing, but there was never any pushback on the way that the church has just like sprinkled a little bit of Christianity over cultural conceptions of the centrality of the nuclear family over our lives. It's just like, it's just making an idol out of the nuclear family and using some Christianese around the topic. Okay. And so I was just like, okay, finally something is going to be said that pushes back against this cultural milieu that we're living in that just idolizes, mom, dad, kids, white picket fence, dog. Like, okay. And you can imagine how my heart sank when I opened up my bulletin before the service even started and read that the title of the sermon from 1 Corinthians 7, the verse that says, being single is better than being married, the title of the sermon was, The Glories of Marriage. I'm like, the glories of marriage! This chapter says don't get married! But I just remember being so crestfallen at that. And then, indeed, the whole sermon was about how great marriage is. And I'm just like, what? I mean, okay. I need to proof text what I just said because it's so inappropriate.
Go ahead.
Phil.
Go ahead.
1 Corinthians
Help
7, 8, and 9. To the unmarried and the widows, I say that it is good for them to remain single as I am. But if they cannot exercise self-control, this is what I just said before, in a vulgar way that I apologize for. If they cannot exercise self-control, then they should marry. For it is better to marry than to burn with passion. So, anyway, yes, the church, the capital C church, especially in the West, and especially in the 21st century, has lifted marriage up as if it is the pinnacle of human relationship, as if every other form of relationship doesn't just take a back seat, but like you are on a megabus and marriage is driving the megabus and and your friendships go in the luggage compartment. Like there is such a prioritization of marriage over every other relationship that I just don't see in the Bible.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was thinking back to the article that you shared, and I'm looking here to find the paragraph. It's because one of the things, I remember what it said about adulthood. We prioritize so many things when it comes to becoming an adult, but making friends is not part of one of those achievements. I think is one of the things that I was talking about in adulthood. But making friends is not one of those achievements. And I think marriage is a part of that that system of having those achievements. You get your have your, get your married so you can get your home and you can have your children.
Yes.
And you those are your achievements. And I think like you're saying, it's not biblical.
Right. And I mean, and this is not, like I could just sort of just picked on that pastor, right? I love him. Like, what a wonderful man he is. And he didn't mean anything by it. We're swimming in this culture that says the nuclear family is everything and your friendships are practically nothing. And so it's not his fault, just like I remember, I'm not sure if it's accurate to call this a microaggression, but that seems the closest term that accurately reflects what this is. But I remember being in a small group Bible study, and when at the end of our Bible study, we would do praise and prayer requests, and one of the praises was phrased in this way: well, our daughter's boyfriend has proposed, and so now they're engaged, and he is just the kind of man that every parent what is he's a great guy. And this is how you say it. He's a great guy. And then they said and so what's happening for our daughter is exactly what every parent wants for their child. And I thought, all right, a couple of things. I thought, number one, okay, here I am, single adult dude in this Bible study. So what you're basically telling me is that I'm a giant disappointment to my parents because they never got what every parent wants. They never got to go to my wedding, like way too expensive. Why did we waste all this money wedding? Two, what if you were thinking biblically and not Americanly? What you would have said is so what's happening for our daughter is exactly what every parent wants for their child if their child isn't called to the even greater vocation of singleness and celibacy. Because what you should want for your little girl, even more than her getting married to Prince Charming, is that she joins a convent and devotes her life to Christ.
I am going to push back on that. I looked at this, and I agree with you. I agree with you. I've already stated that I think it is an unbiblical idea that we want all of our young people to get married. I think that's very unbiblical, and to the detriment of whatever it is that God, and to whatever God calls us to, and why God calls us to that. And we may not, and I may never know fully why someone else is called to a particular calling. But as it relates to this verse, and I think this is what Paul is getting at, and because he talks about this later, contentment with where you are, and he's speaking, to these people, to this church, to these Christians who were, doing all types of crazy things, or wanting to divorce their unsaved husbands, or, being with people they shouldn't have been with. And he's saying, be content where you are. And I think the church makes it hard for us to do that, right? It does not, I mean, more than it should be, it makes it harder than it should be in America for us to to practice contentment. It makes it harder for us to say, God, this is where you have me. And my fellow believers are going to come alongside me and are going to support me because this is where you have me.
Yes. And I just want to say for the record, before we move on, I do not believe that when we elevate singleness and celibacy, that we are, as a consequence, diminishing marriage. No, we don't need to do that. If anything I've said sounds like a diminishment of the sacred institution of marriage, I deeply apologize, because it is a sacred institution created by God himself. The lifelong covenantal one flesh union of man and wife is beautiful, and I'm deeply appreciative of the married people in my life who have displayed the beauty of that relationship. So I'm not diminishing marriage. What I am trying to do is elevate singleness and celibacy to its biblical station, which almost no one in 21st century America does.
Yeah, I think what comes to mind too is that friendship should not be a means, but should be an end as well. Because again, in our American culture, it is. And I mean, in Christian American culture, like a guy becomes friends with a girl to what?
Date her and marry her and make babies.
I mean, but yeah, that's why a guy becomes friends with the girl. And I grew up in this. I grew up in this system. I grew up in this thinking. And so, I mean, it is how my life has been shaped, and you know, and even it even contributes to, you know, some of the feelings that I've had before I even got married. I don't know if I ever was really content with being single. I can honestly say I don't know if I was. And so maybe God was calling me to something different. But maybe it could be contributed. The type of thinking, American thinking, was a contribution to my lack of contentment. So.
Yes. Oh, I think so. I mean, wouldn't it be radical if, instead of assuming that Johnny and Susie were going to grow up and get married, you assumed their default was that Johnny and Susie would grow up and embrace vocational singleness. And then if they just happen to get married, oh, that's awesome. The human race will continue.
Right. Yeah, I mean, but but that's the thing. Like, I mean, can we imagine something else other than, you know, people being? I mean, I guess for men we can't. We do imagine it because we don't. I guess for Christians we don't. In most conservative, or we would say biblically conservative, you know, that conservatism is such a hot word right now.
Yeah.
But
you're talking in the theological sense, not the political.
Yes.
One.
Yes. The theologically conservative, we believe in marriage between a man and a woman, and so of course we don't see that they don't become friends to get married, but just being able.
Yes, it's one of the beautiful things about friendship is that there's none of this baggage associated with it. Like, if it doesn't, if you just remain casual friends with someone, like, you can remain casual, like, not super close friends with them, but, like, if you don't want to go out on another date with someone, the relationship is over.
Right. And there goes my another chance of getting married. And, you know, and so, but again, just coming back to the friendship, because that's what we're really trying to get at, is that we really do need to rethink that friendship can be an end, that friendship needs to be an end. Like I just want someone who can know me not as a servant or me as a master, as someone to use, but as just someone to care, and someone that I care for, and someone I love, and someone who loves me back. And as a brother or sister in Christ.
Exactly. And I mean, and you're right, Phil, like that we can live, like, let's be the change, people who are listening to this. Let's be the change and embrace friendship between men and women that is not a means to an end, but isn't the end itself. The friendship is the end,
Yes.
and not a means
Yes.
to get in bed.
Right.
You know, I think, like, no, we've spent long enough on this. I don't want to belabor this. I do, because someday soon, Phil, I do want to do an episode on vocational singleness.
Sounds good, and I hope that we have a lot of comments. And if you have, like, if you want to share your ideas, and maybe we can incorporate those into that episode. So plug.
Yes.
So yeah, I think this another relationship that influences how men become friends is the relationship of the father and the son. And I would thought about this as I was reading your article over the weekend. And I just share a little anecdote. I really do, and I kind of feel silly, like when I see my especially the male students getting out of the car and the father's dropping them off, and some of the students, it's just natural. The son will kiss the father, and the father will kiss the son, and even the father will say, "What? Don't forget my kiss," to his son, yes. And like continuing that or some form of that, yes, on into adolescence, teenage, and adulthood, would help us men, yes, be more comfortable with affection.
Yes. Yes. I just yes, I say amen to that. I think there is there are about 1,000 things I want to say, and the horrible thing about speech is you have to choose one at a time.
Right.
But yeah, I think this is one of the roots of toxic masculinity
yeah,
in our culture.
Yeah.
And there are other roots as well, but this idea that fathers and sons can't be affectionate with one another, or that they can only be affectionate with one another when the son is under a certain age, it's deadly, it's poisonous, it's just really unhealthy.
Yeah, I think, like, in especially like the teenage years, that we really we really need that affection, because, yes, you're trying to figure yourself out.
Yes.
And home base is the family. Yes. Because if whatever is going, and with social media now, I can remember in middle school, maybe I said something and I'm like thinking to myself, man, I really hate I said that thing, or whatever. And and being able to kind of get away from it and forget about it. With social media, once you put it out there, it's out there. And once you say something or do something, people can react to it in the moment, people in other places. But being able to come home and have that person to say, it's okay, son. Yes. It's okay, daughter. Yes. I still love you. And that's that first affirming relationship where it's not based on means or based on the servant master, but a relationship based on, you're my son and that's it.
Yes.
You're my daughter and that's it. I love you.
Yes.
So
can I give one piece of practical advice?
Yes,
partly
please.
Because I think it's funny. We'll break the moment. But I was once taught, you know how men tend to hug one another with like the big 3 pats?
Right.
Well, I was once taught that kind of hug is the "I'm not gay" hug. Those 3 pats are nonverbal signals of "I'm not gay." Y'all, a hug is where you take someone into an embrace and you hold them. That's what a hug is. So, practical piece of advice, fathers. Your son knows because you were like your sperm caused him with your wife.
Okay.
He knows you're not gay. You don't need to give him the "I'm not gay" hug.
We're gonna have to probably put the a disclaimer on this episode.
What? I said the word sperm, but that isn't a bad word, is it?
I don't know. I don't want to. We are definitely going full length. I don't want to keep cut out these tangents.
I'm sorry, Phil. I'm sorry.
It's cool. It's cool. Like this is what we're talking about, right?
Maybe we this is a conversation we shouldn't have recorded.
No, but we told you that we probably may not be short. So in order for us not to make it longer, I'm not gonna make the comment that I was going to make.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, dear audience.
It's okay. It's all good. If they're listening, this is why they're listening, right? Because we're having these conversations, and I hope you're talking to your computer monitor and to your speakers. You're making notes, and please share with us. This is a conversation. Honestly, it's a conversation.
Yes.
So next, I think we've been touching on it, but maybe we can touch on it some more. Seeing people as the end and not means.
Yes.
And I think one way you really demonstrate that, and we see this, when you look at, if you understand the history of slavery in this country, because those people were property, because enslaved people was treated as property. When those people died on the way to this country, they had insurance on them. And so they recouped their cost of losing that person who they had enslaved. And again, if you're seeing a person as a means, you're waiting on that payday, right?
Yes.
You're waiting on that whatever the return is going to be. And I think, man, like our relationships are fruitful. Like, because I know people, that does help me. But again, is that the reason why I'm trying to get to know them? Or does it continue to be the reason that I get to know them? I don't want to pretend that we never build relationships because without external or different motives, but does it ever go beyond the person being a means to an end?
Yes, exactly. So Aelred of Rievaulx was a 12th century Cistercian abbot. And his book on spiritual friendship is kind of difficult to read, as are most things from the Middle Ages. But he defined 3 types of what we would call friendship: carnal, worldly, and spiritual friendship. And Phil, like, carnal and worldly friendship, Aelred said, weren't friendship at all. The only true kind of friendship was spiritual friendship. Some Reformed thinkers would say that the unregenerate soul is incapable of true sacrificial love. That the unregenerate soul is always in probably ways they aren't even conscious of, seeking some sort of return on their investment. And so that kind of parallels what Aelred was saying about how in carnal and worldly quote unquote friendship, the parties involved are in some way seeking their own gain, whereas in spiritual friendship, as you said, Phil, the friendship itself is the ends. It is delighting in the person that is the ends, not what the person can do for you, not what the person can give to you, but rather the person, him or herself.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the word we I think we come back to the other part of the command, that sacrificial nature.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like I said before, in like you're saying, in the opposite of real friendship, you're willing to sacrifice the person, but when you are a friend, you're willing to sacrifice yourself.
Mm. Yes. Yes.
We make, when I if I'm loving someone, and this again, this goes beyond just friendships, but we can start here. um when if I'm really trying to be a good friend, I will say, okay, let me give this time out of my day.
Mm-hmm.
um and I think, I want to say again, I think this work happens first of all by the Holy Spirit most times.
Yeah.
Because I think you said this in the past, like, if I've ever said an encouraging word or done something, that was helpful, it probably was, the Spirit moving me more than it was
Mm-hmm.
me consciously,
Yes.
always very intentionally doing
Yes.
that. But yes, that's sacrificial. And I think again, like I think again, we are only trying to reflect the love and the sacrificial nature that Christ has shown towards us, right?
Yes.
'Cause hopefully we never have to give our life,
Mm.
but maybe hopefully, when if that day comes, the Holy Spirit will move on us in such a way that we are at least willing
Right.
to give our life.
Right. I just want to make two comments related to that, Phil, because what you said is so true, absolutely true. But I do want to provide two qualifiers.
Okay.
First is our comment, or our what we mentioned last week about the circles of friendship and how we not all of our relationships will be spiritual friendships on that level of sacrifice, because we only, as human beings, have the capacity for a handful of those friendships that consistently require deep sacrifice. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing to mention is just, um, even if you desire a spiritual friendship with someone, if they are not behaving as a spiritual friend in return, and you are the one constantly sacrificing for them, and it is not reciprocal, or if it is taken advantage of or taken for granted, that can be the on-ramp to a really toxic kind of friendship, a quasi-abusive friendship. So I do feel like I feel a little bit of responsibility to caution people, like I would with any deeply meaningful relationship. Just like
Yeah.
those who are entering into committed romantic relationships, like they know, because our culture has taught them to take it seriously and to be circumspect. And I do think we should enter into friendships in very much the same way, with a certain soberness, about, okay, if you're really going to do friendship with someone Christianly, in that deep, spiritually intertwined, covenantal, and committed way, you can't do that with just anyone. It needs to be someone who is worthy of the kind of trust we talked about a few minutes ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, again, I one of the other things I want to say, and I really do want us to touch on this last thing before we wrap, but one other thing I want to say about this is that, like I said before, we're imitating, and first, we, the more, and Pastor TJ has said this before, so like, what is the remedy for trying to be a better friend? What is the solution, or what is the medicine you can take to, be a better friend? Is to soak in the love that has been given to you in Christ, in the gospel.
Yes. Yes.
What is Christ? Soaking in that, and constantly soaking in that, and out of that soaking, I really like how he said that, sit and soak, like it just, that will ooze out of you towards other people. It will ooze out of you towards other people, and some days it doesn't ooze as fast as other days.
Yes.
You need it more than you need to give it,
Exactly. Yes. But such a good word, Phil. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to encourage us in that, even as we're saying this, but just it's a process, and I think you, Adam, we're talking just a little further down the road than maybe you may be, but we've been where you are. We're just a little further down the road than where you are. I think the last thing to end this, kind of really ties into what I just said. Being a friend, and I formed this as a question. My friend as I am, do I need to change for you to be my friend? How does that work? Adam, what do you like? What is your thoughts on that?
Well, it's not a spiritual friendship. It's not a real friendship, not a biblical or Christian friendship. If there's a condition on it, right?
Right.
That love is unconditional. So yes, Phil, you are my friend as you are. It reminds me of a quote. You give your thoughts for 20 seconds while I look up this quote.
Okay. I agree with you. Yeah, it cannot be conditional. And one of the things that I'm trying to, and again, it's a work in progress. One of the things that I'm trying to work on, and I said this in a previous episode, of out of the love that I give, create beauty. And paraphrasing Martin Luther. And so, yeah, and I really struggle, and I'm sure people struggle with me too, because I as much the flattering words that you share, I'm pretty sure I'm difficult. I know I'm difficult at times.
Well, maybe it's just that in comparison to even more difficult people.
Okay. It's relative.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, I think, but yeah, I think going back to that, and as you understand how much Christ has loved you, and how wretched we are, maybe I can extend a little more grace to that person who's really getting on my nerves today.
Yes. I found the quote that I was thinking of. Thanks for your patience, Phil. And I think this would be a great way to end today. This is from Wesley Hill's book, also like Elreda Rivaux's treatise entitled Spiritual Friendship. This is what he says. The Catholic writer and activist Maggie Gallagher describes two kinds of relationships. To the first, she gives the tagline, "You're mine because I love you." On the other hand, Gallagher talks about a different sort of relationship. To this one, she gives a tagline that's the inverse of her first, "I love you because you're mine." In this latter type of friendship, my love for you isn't the basis of our connection. It's the other way around. We are bound to each other, and therefore I love you. What would it mean to see friendship, specifically Christian friendship, the kind we want to strengthen and nurture in our churches, as more of the second kind of relationship than the first? What would it mean if we made promises to each other precisely as friends? So, Phil, I hope that our friendship is I love you because you're mine. I love you, Phil, because you're my friend. Not you're my friend because I love you. And then, when I don't feel the love anymore, I'm not your friend. Nope, sorry. I've made the commitment to be your friend, Phil. And so whether I feel love or whether I feel like you're difficult, you're my friend, and therefore I love you.
That's good. That's a great way to end. I love you too, Adam, even when you're difficult.
Which is frequently.
No.
Just, you know what?
No.
It's somehow less egregious if you just own up to it, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dear audience, if you know me personally, I apologize for being difficult.
No. So should we share even a current event segment? What do you think?
Well, we're at 57 minutes now. What do you think? Should we do our traditional segments but keep them short, or forego them?
I think if we want to do both, I think we can I think maybe we could do current events.
All right, current events. I'm going to keep it real brief. I would rather that the outgoing president attend coronavirus task force meetings than call up governors and state legislature members asking for the vote to be overturned. That's it.
Yeah. I made this comment before. Our democracy is very fragile. Mm-hmm. So I think my thought was on I think yesterday was the anniversary of Pearl Harbor, the attack on Pearl Harbor, and so it was just listening to some of the stories, just reflecting on the events around that. One of the stories they shared was how African American soldiers went to fight, during the war and had to come back home. Especially around hearing that, like one of the gentlemen, he was in school and he left school to be an architect to go fight, and he had to come back to the States and continue to fight for equality. And so just hearing his story, and in that, just it's timely. It's timely right now. It's a timely story.
For sure, yes.
Yeah.
Phil, what did you learn this week?
What did I learn? It's really let me get my words together really quick. Man, friend, it is really good to have friends.
It is.
It's good. It's good.
It really is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And to have these conversations. So what about you? What did you learn?
I think TJ's right. Our chemistry on mic is getting even better, and it was demonstrated this time by me pulling up the list of differences between servant master and friend. And I had not, did I share that list with you ahead of time, Phil? Was that in our document where we plan our stuff? No, that was just me on the spur of the moment being like, oh my goodness, I have a talking point and I have a document that I've pre-prepared about this. And you perfectly encapsulated my friends column, just point by point. You didn't need any coaching. You are wise and a mind reader.
Man, I need to work on the mind reading part. Maybe we can win the lottery or something.
read the mind of the lottery.
That was a terrible line, punch line.
That's
but
okay.
We can do
Even when you're difficult, Phil, I still love you.
All right.
So,
right.
Anything else for the good of the order?
That's it.
All right. Well then, dear audience, I will say bye for now.
Adios.